Just joined us. We're in Sandton today, just north of Johannesburg, and this is the location for the latest in the series of New Age business briefings brought to you by the SABC, and today very kindly sponsored by Transnet. And today, in sharp focus, is the South African Police Service fighting crime, making you safer. And it is a challenging time for the police service, given the challenge that we face with crime in South Africa. And so the police has a lot to do, a lot of work to do. And if you've been watching or reading newspapers, there are a lot of headlines that come through about the police service, whether it's use of excessive force or leaders being suspended or implicated in all sorts of dealings. But the other side of the story as well is, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of police officers being killed whilst on duty and facing danger every single day. So the big question here, I guess, is where does the police service go to from here? What are the challenges that it's facing? And if there's a process of building the kind of police service that can better serve you, what are those steps? Well, to help us explore this and unpack it a little bit further, I've got three guests that are joining us leading this conversation, but we certainly hope that you at home and our audience here will be part of that. At Morning Live SABC, hashtag TNABizBrief is where you can drop your questions and your comments. But I'd like to welcome our guests. They're going to help us unpack this issue today, starting with the Minister of Police, the Honourable Nhleko. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to the program.
No, thank you very much, and good morning to yourself, listeners and viewers as well.
Thank you very much indeed. And next to you is the Deputy Minister of Police, the Honourable Sotyu. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to you.
Morning to you, Peter, and also to the viewers.
And the man in the hot seat at the moment, very warm welcome to you, Lieutenant General Phahlane. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to you.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers and to the South Africans at large. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, let's get straight into this conversation then, and let's look at the big picture, because this conversation's kind of around the theme back to basics towards a safer tomorrow. And I'm just wondering, what does that mean to you?
Look, the starting point on our side is that the work of the South African Police Service has got to satisfy one major objective, and that objective is for our people's ordinary South Africans to feel safe and to be safe, largely on the one hand. Now, but that, for us to be able to succeed in delivering that particular objective requires a multi-pronged kind of approach, for an example. But that multi-pronged approach hinges on four critical aspects. The first one is that we need to emphasize on issues of visible policing. Now, visible policing in this instance would have to talk to specific programs as well, amongst others. And one of the considerations is the question of what happens over the festive season, for an example. But also, how do we enhance some of the gains that we have made through Operation Phahlane and so on, but targeting the festive season and beyond into the new year, amongst other things. Now, there's a question also of being visible in public spaces. And one of the considerations is that we have police academies, for an example. We have students, people that are training to become policemen and women and so forth. And that must be tapped into as a force multiplier, amongst other things. So that's the aspect around the issue of visible policing. The other area, which is quite critical, and wherever you go interacting with ordinary South Africans, one of the issues that bedevils the image of the police is that we get accused of cases that would have been opened and not finalized, whether 10 years or 5 years later on and so forth. So whichever area that you visit, you will come across this particular complaint. And that talks to the issue of detectives and investigations. Now, that area has got to be zoomed into, because members of the public can only have confidence in the police if around issues of detective work and investigations, for an example. There are results that therefore, they tend to drive towards finalization of cases and progress around particular specific cases and so on. So that's one critical area. Now, some of the measures that we have begun looking into, for instance, we've conducted a docket analysis in terms of the age analysis of cases and so forth, and looking at what are the actual causes of these kinds of backlogs, but also what kind of interventions we would have to make to try and unblock some of the areas there and so on. But the fact of the matter is that one area is that you also require institutional turnaround insofar as the detectives are concerned. Now, the third pillar, which is also quite critical, is the question of, in fact, I call it a pillar, but in a sense, if you look at it, it's a resource pond of sorts. And that's intelligence work. The manner in which you deploy your forces, for an example, must be informed by ground intelligence and so forth. The manner in which you deal with whether you want to enhance visible policing or issues of detective work and investigations must also be intelligence driven. And so that's one central sort of a point, really. So we do want to emphasize on these ones, including the fourth one being the question of social interaction on an ongoing basis. In other words, the manner in which we interact with the members of the community on the ground around issues of policing and so on, and forming tangible, practical, and constructive kind of partnerships. Because policing can only succeed largely on the basis of the extent to which we are able to work together with members of the community in different sectors in bringing about the peace and stabilize the society.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. You've mentioned quite a number of things that I would like to unpack a little bit further on as the conversation unfolds. Deputy Minister, perhaps you can share with us how do we get that relationship right with the public? Because in the end, you can't do it without them, because they are eyes and ears. There's only, 15,000 police officers, 150,000 police officers. So you can't possibly do this without them. How do you win their trust, get them to buy in and be partners with you?
Thank you very much, Peter. One thing that we need to understand is the fact that the police, without the involvement of the communities, they will never be able to win crime. But I would like to just highlight on the issue of the police themselves, because we'll hear people, or even the minister has given you, outlined to yourself, what is expected from the police, and also what is expected from the communities. But from myself, I think what is important as the leadership is to look into the wellness of the police. In order for them to be able to do what is expected from them, they need to be looked after. It is the responsibility of the communities, it is the responsibility of us as leadership to look at the wellness of the police, to boost the morale of the police. In order for us then to be able to do that, we must have policies that are aligned to the times that we're living in. You talk about your promotion policy. I can't remember whether we have a promotion policy or not. And then you look at the training of the police. You look at the number of the police that are being killed, under which mood were they killed, you see? Yeah. In other words, we want an active police officer. When you leave your house in the morning, go to protect the communities and the state, somebody must also look after your kids at home. That is the wellness that I'm talking about. Because, Peter, if all these programs that we have, we say that the police are supposed then to make sure that they effect that, we need to have a healthy police officer in order for them to do that. Therefore, it's up to us to make sure that the wellness of the police is one of our priorities in the Department of Police.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. National Police Commissioner, this is a view of the policymakers, but you're the guy on the front line every single day, living the actual life itself. And I'm sure that some of the headlines that you have to read every single day don't please you. What is the state of the police service from your viewpoint? If I'm just relying on what I read, I probably think that it's a mess. What is the state of affairs?
It can never be a mess. We are a leadership of this South African Police Service. It's an institution established in terms of the Constitution. It is an institution that has got the authority to police society. And we as members have got no other mandate other than to ensure that that which the Constitution demands from all of us is translated into practice. The Minister has spoken about visible policing. It's a very critical element of proactive policing because we don't have to wait until things go wrong. We need to ensure proactive policing. That will bring some confidence back in our communities. That will ensure that we solicit the cooperation of the communities, which is very critical in the fight against crime. The second area that the Minister would have spoken to, investigation of crime. If we were not able to prevent crime, there where it has manifested itself, we have a responsibility to channel our resources towards the effective investigation of those crimes so that the perpetrators thereof are brought to book and make sure that the cases get processed through the criminal justice system. An area which also is very critical that the Minister spoke to, intelligence. We need, for proactive policing to happen, you need information amongst others. When is what going to happen? Therefore, there will be heavy reliance on our part, on our intelligence capabilities. Now, that will not happen if we do not have buy-in from our communities, if there is no active participation of communities in policing. You unfortunately will never have a situation where there is a police person for each and every member of the community or for each and every house. Therefore, the role of the community cannot be underscored. The killing of police people hurts big time. If you were to talk about a crisis, that's the one that I'll say, to me, it's worrying. An attack on the police, it's an attack on the authority of the state. And therefore, this matter cannot be taken very lightly. As communities, we need to rally behind the police, where, for example, we had these unfortunate killings, that we are provided with the necessary information so that we can find a place for those who are perpetrating, to go and rest somewhere in jail, because that can never be tolerated. But lastly, I think it is important that we function as a collective, as management. I don't think there is a crisis at management level. We have taken cue from what the Minister expected from us, what the President expects, obviously what the country expects, and we went into session to try and find ourselves and say, how are we going to cover some ground between now and the end of this financial year? And I am confident that the majority of the people at this level where I am, only purpose is to serve this country and serve it with pride.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for your opening thoughts, Commissioner. And after the break, we're going to have to take a quick break now. When we come back, we also went onto the streets in South Africa to get a sense of the public perception. What are they thinking? Find out what you're saying out there after this. Stay with us.